According to recent psychological studies, the average person spends a huge portion of their day inside imagined conversations that never actually happen. But for some people, it goes far beyond normal daydreaming. They don't just imagine random situations. They create entire emotional realities inside their head. Arguments, future success, worst-case scenarios, perfect conversations, people leaving them, people finally understanding them. And sometimes those imagined situations feel so emotionally real that their body reacts as if they actually happened. Now here's the interesting part. Most people think imagining fake scenarios is just overthinking, but psychologically, it's often much deeper than that. Because many people who constantly imagine scenarios are not escaping reality. They're trying to emotionally prepare for it. Let me explain. There's a certain kind of person whose mind almost never fully switches off. A small interaction happens, and suddenly their brain starts building possibilities around it. Someone replies differently than usual. Now their mind is imagining what they meant, what could happen next, whether something changed, future conversations that haven't even happened yet. And while other people move on quickly, their brain keeps expanding the situation internally. Psychologists sometimes connect this behavior to anticipatory thinking. The mind tries to predict emotional outcomes before they happen. Because deep down, the brain believes, if I can mentally prepare for pain, maybe it won't hurt as much later. That's why many people who imagine fake scenarios are extremely mentally active. Their mind constantly runs simulations, not because they enjoy overthinking, but because uncertainty feels emotionally uncomfortable. And honestly, for many people, this pattern started very early. Some grew up in emotionally unpredictable environments. Moods changed suddenly. Conflict appeared unexpectedly. Emotional safety felt inconsistent. So their brain adapted by constantly thinking ahead, trying to predict reactions, tension problems, emotional shifts, and over time, imagining scenarios became automatic, even in situations where there's no real danger anymore. That's why some people can never fully relax mentally. Even peaceful moments become, what if something goes wrong? And eventually, the mind gets so used to preparing for possibilities that it struggles to stay present in reality. Another fascinating part of this psychology is that imagined scenarios are not always negative. Sometimes people imagine finally being understood, becoming successful, perfect relationships, ideal versions of themselves, because fantasy temporarily gives the brain emotional experiences reality may not currently provide. For lonely people, imagined conversations can create temporary connection. For anxious people, imagined success creates temporary control. For emotionally overwhelmed people, fantasy creates temporary escape. And that's why these scenarios can become addictive, because the imagined world often feels emotionally safer than the unpredictable real one. But here's where it becomes exhausting. The brain doesn't always separate imagined emotion from real emotion perfectly. So even fake situations can create real anxiety, real sadness, real anger, real emotional exhaustion. You imagine an argument, and suddenly your body feels tense. You imagine rejection, and your mood changes instantly. You replay fake conversations so intensely that your nervous system reacts as if the event actually happened. That's why many people who constantly imagine scenarios feel mentally drained all the time. Their body keeps experiencing emotions for situations that never even occurred. And over time, this creates something dangerous. You stop fully experiencing the present moment because part of your mind is always living somewhere else. In future possibilities, imagined conversations alternate realities, worst-case outcomes. And honestly, many people become so emotionally attached to imagined scenarios that reality starts feeling emotionally flat in comparison. Real life moves slowly. The mind moves instantly, which is why imagination can quietly become emotional overstimulation. Another thing people rarely talk about is this. People who imagine fake scenarios are often extremely emotionally aware. They think deeply, feel deeply, analyze deeply. Their mind notices emotional details most people ignore. And because they process emotions intensely, their brain naturally builds stories around those emotions. That's why many highly imaginative people are also creative, emotionally intelligent, introspective, empathetic. The problem is not imagination itself. The problem is when imagination becomes constant, emotional escape. Because eventually, overthinking stops protecting you and starts emotionally exhausting you. And maybe the hardest part is this. Most people who constantly imagine scenarios are fully aware they're doing it. They know, I'm probably overthinking. But awareness alone doesn't stop the cycle, because this behavior is not just mental, it's emotional. The brain keeps searching for certainty, control, comfort, or emotional closure, even if it has to create those things artificially through imagination. But healing usually begins when people realize something important. Not every future situation needs preparation. Not every silence needs interpretation. Not every imagined outcome deserves emotional energy. Sometimes the mind creates scenarios simply because it became too used to living in possibility instead of presence. And slowly, overly imaginative people have to learn how to come back to reality again. Not by destroying imagination, but by stopping imagination from controlling their emotional state. Because imagination can be beautiful. It creates creativity, goals, ideas, empathy. But when the mind never stops creating emotional realities, peace becomes very difficult. And maybe that's the real psychology behind people who constantly imagine fake scenarios. It's often not attention-seeking. It's not being dramatic. It's a mind trying to protect itself from uncertainty by mentally living through experiences before they even happen. If this resonated with you, consider subscribing, because a lot of people are emotionally exhausting themselves every day inside situations that only exist in their own mind.